folks. Welcome to the next edition of Serverless Craic. Absolutely roasting here in sunny Belfast. How are you keeping?
Warm, very warm.
Good. Sweltered.
Nice and cool.
Our houses are not set up for this type of weather.
21 degrees and I'm done. I can't handle it. Um, right. We're still tipping through, working through the book, which I think is interesting. Right. Also interesting to see what you wrote 4 or 5 years ago. Um, we're in chapter 14, which is in the sort of the third phase of the flywheel, that next best action, the frictionless dev experience. And last time we talked about in the sunny world of AI, does some of the stuff still stand up? So maybe we just keep that going. I think we got to page 172, wasn't it?
Yeah, we finished off last time with shared outcomes and recognition. So I guess we're into the something that's very relevant nowadays: sense checking, the miner's canary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something I find there's something very interesting. If a structural engineer, if you're building a bridge and someone says that bridge is probably going to fall down because the math doesn't add up, you stop.
Yeah.
But in software, someone says that's still going to work, and you go, you don't know anything. I'm going to do it anyway.
Yes.
And it still fails. So
Yes.
it's
I think that
yeah.
this one also goes back to sort of psychological safety and inviting challenge that we've talked about in previous recordings as well. So you need to have an environment where sense checking is welcomed, challenged is welcomed, and you're not trying to shoot the messenger sometimes. So as
Big
we go
time.
into this, there's ways of doing this appropriately and creating an environment that enables sense checking.
It's one thing having the talent to spot something that's not right. It's a whole other thing having the emotional intelligence to listen to a warning when someone says that's not going to work from a leadership perspective.
Yeah.
Because it could be your brilliant idea. Someone says, by the way, that's not going to work. And
Mm.
organizationally, you need to go, okay, let's understand this perspective. And it could result in us pivoting our idea.
Mm.
But people often just blindly ignore the individual and keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, good teams will, you know, I think like most good teams,
Good teams will listen, absolutely. Good teams are like, oh my God, thank you. I didn't
yeah.
spot that.
And
Yeah.
and and a lot of it, a lot of what we would kind of say, what's the term, Mark? You always kind of use it like, what's it? We do an awful lot up front to kind of manage risk, and so we'll do things like threat model, and we'll do our well architected reviews. So there should be an open mind. Most teams will have an open mind to anything there. Anything that comes through as a gap in the process and should be treated as such. And you can learn from it as well. So to your point, like you have threat models, and you're kind of aware where most teams should kind of have a healthy attitude towards managing risk, right?
Hmm.
I would have thought, but yeah,
All this is about this it's feedback, and sometimes it's how we approach giving that feedback as well. I always tend to err on the side of being friendly and optimistic about this. Like, here, have you thought about this? Have you looked at the well architected? Have you, done your threat model? Have you articulated your IDRs, or have you thought about this particular pattern or technique? So I'm always trying to frame it in a positive light. Here, there's this way that you can improve. There's always be wary of, oh, that's not how we do things, or criticizing people. So it's always
mm,
trying to approach it from a
Hmm.
an enabling feedback, not trying to criticize
yeah.
people.
And even
Well,
more
here's
recently, we've been playing around with like RFC type things as well. Like so going out of your way and creating requests for if there's some area of uncertainty or something like that as well. It's always kind of good to seek feedback from those maybe not directly in your squad or
hmm.
um,
So here's the thing. Again, just sweeping generalizations, but like we often say when you're in a map, you can challenge the map, it's easier than challenging the person. But is there a flip here? If like we're all doing stuff with agents and AI and whatnot, and I often talk about the Socratic method. You're saying like I'm going to do this. Can you find fault with it?
Yeah.
If the agent says, "Oh, that's not going to work for this very good reason," number one, do you trust that the agent is correct? And number two, would you listen to it more than if Mike tells me it's not going to work? So do you think that might change behaviors, or will people, or I see South Park's doing a great slant on people listening to AI more than human beings?
Yeah, it's a it removes certainly some of that fear factor of asking for help. So you can sit and ask it questions all day long and it'll not judge you based on, hey, your solution terrible. Why did you do this, that, and the other? It'll just give you
Mm.
the feedback, and you can ask it where the gaps are. The challenge is that it may not have all the context, so it may not have been informed about, well, what are your organizational standards? What is what are your principles and guidelines and tech stack that your org is using? So whenever you're getting feedback, you may be asking me to give you feedback on a standard that's not actually in place in your organization.
That's true. Yeah.
Context that you don't have. So some of that,
Yeah.
in fact, the stuff we've talked about earlier around environment for success, you need to be able to articulate, well, what are your standards? What are your guidelines? What are your practices and processes and the things that you want to get feedback on? So having those available definitely gives you a leg up. And if you can democratize those things and give them to your teams in like markdown files or folders or whatever, then they can self-serve this feedback. They can self-serve this checking themselves in a less challenging way for them. Right? They don't have to talk to your architect or your principal engineer. They can just get this feedback themselves and get a much better solution in place first before then going to your principal or your senior engineer or whatever. Right?
But it is a cracking question, Dave. Even listening to what you two are just saying, it's something I've been kind of wrestling with a lot lately. When it comes to LLMs and how they're kind of used in the day to day. And I think when you kind of think about it, like, I mean, I don't know, Mark, based on what you're saying, there's almost like you've almost got to be able to evaluate like the risk when it comes to consequence. You know what I mean? So if you're sitting back and you've got like an unbounded or an uncontext fed LLM and you're making significant technical decisions just through interaction with it and basing your confidence on your interactions with it moving out, that typically that is not, where we're coming from. You're normally got enterprise constraints in place. There's normally kind of things there that bar progressing too far in one kind of direction. But if you're kind of then motoring down with LLM, it maybe hasn't got that context, it does introduce, could be potentially in dealing with more risk. When she's probably seeing like more, with the BMAD method or Kiro's sort of context-driven, sort of approaches, I think the industry is starting to kind of react to that and start to kind of add in those constraints, those enabling constraints.
It's funny when in the book, like whenever we read this, there was under method there must also be common understanding of the engineering standards across the organization.
Yeah.
That's becoming more and more important with LLMs. And what I'm finding fascinating is we're starting to document our standards and our processes and our practices better now for AI and LLMs than we ever did for people and teams.
Yeah.
AI is more important. AI is more important, Mark. Know that, of course. It's a good question, but I think also I do like this stuff is going to come in to standard practice across organizations and enterprises. Like it will come in. I think if you're sitting with an engineer and something has landed in production and something's gone wrong, you should have a paper trail of how they got there. Even better than you would previously. Because if you're doing it right with a model, you're almost like stepping stones. Here's a doc A from doc B to doc C. You'll see the thought process. It should be all checked in and sitting somewhere. So you should be able to go back and go, oh, hang on a second. In your design, there was this paragraph here, which we know is total nonsense. If you had to fix this, that wouldn't have happened. This problem we're talking about now. Why did you think that was a good idea? And it's going to go back to responsibility and accountability because you need to say to the engineer, if you didn't think it was a good idea, why did you not stop it back then? So I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and I think that
Same principle.
Human in the loop and critical thinking is going to be ever more important. You got to be able to stand over any of the outputs that you produce. And it was the same back in the day, but it's going to have to be what's more important going forward. And like under the sense checking, we have method, cadence, metrics, and formality. Right, the cadence is important here. I think it's shouldn't just be, hey, once every 3 years we've done a review of your design or your architecture or your solution. It should be something that's practiced regularly, right? You should be, seeking out challenge and seeking out feedback. It shouldn't just be
Yeah,
something you do, at the end, right? You should hopefully get
yeah.
feedback as you go along
And
the
here and
journey.
here's the thing, like I think when we were thinking about this, I would have said this was probably quite an advanced thing. They have a real structured method, have a cadence and the feedback and
Yeah,
all that stuff, the formality. That would have been quite unachievable for some teams because you could have sat down, people could have said, we just didn't have time to do that. We had to get the market.
yeah,
But with the LLMs and AI stuff, you have to do this. There's no other way. Well, there is another way. You can completely vibe code it and not check anything in for any of your design documents, which people will do, but I don't think
yeah.
that's gonna last for
And,
enterprise software
and
development.
I think we called out here about metrics, right? How do you know you're on track? What does success look like for you? What are your key KPIs? Do you have them instrumented? Do you have dashboards? Do you have alarms, alert policies?
Hmm.
These are all good things that you need to make sure that you have available to you to know that you're on the right track, right? It's just a feedback mechanism. It's a feedback loop for, hey, we're doing the right things, right? So I think it's critical that you have that. And then there is a little bit of formality, I think, of some of this stuff. It should be structured and organizational rigor to inject
Yeah.
some of that formality to make sure that teams are doing the right things.
Yeah, I think maybe even what you were saying, Dave, on the traceability, I think that's a really strong point these days. Being able to kind of trace something back to an origin, um, given sort of what we're dealing with in the sort of modern
Yeah.
day LLM based arcs. So
And then and on the next kind of section, then we talk about the marginal gains. I mean, I do think Mark, you picked that up after watching the British cycling team a lot of
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yep.
Um,
David Brailsford.
that's
happy now.
such a good mindset. And you always think that when you're doing like code reviews, design reviews, and this type of stuff, it's about the small things that it's the small things that matter. It's such a powerful mindset when you're doing this stuff.
And teams that get it start to see the benefit. There's massive compounding benefits of continuously reviewing, continuously improving, continuously seeking that challenge and feedback, and making those small improvements. And we talk about it a lot, but the score process is a great exemplar of this, right?
Yeah.
You're meeting maybe every couple of weeks. You're getting that feedback, and you're improving across maybe a little bit in security, and a little bit in operational excellence, and a little bit in reliability. All those things in isolation may not have made much of a difference, but over months and quarters and years, those things compound really, really well. And then you have less outages, you're delivering more value, your time to market is improved, all because you're just having that momentum and you're getting those small marginal gains, and people buy into that mindset. And it really does,
Mm.
it's part of the whole flywheel concept, right? It does build
Yeah.
itself.
And you totally can see it in teams. You can see it when it's alive and thriving. You can see when it's absent. It even rolls into the next bit, the first principles of engineers. It's almost like we always say that when you be talking to an engineer and a guy goes, I just test, I don't do anything else. And you go, uh-oh.
Yeah.
So that agency is not there. You know what I mean? That engineering mindset is missing. And that's always a massive warning flag, and the whole team need to have that mindset, not just the tech lead.
Yeah.
And you can see it's so obvious when it's there and when it's not there.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think
Even the last two points are really around scale as well, right? Even now, teams are going to be probably building and responsible for more features and functionality than ever before, right? So how do you scale the team to that sort of scenario?
Yeah,
Um,
mm,
the full stack just got bigger for teams now that they had to do
yeah,
developing and a lot of product engineering work and a lot of the SDLC work in DevOps. A lot of the infrastructure is code now is part of the team, but now also AI is now part of the team's full stack.
mm,
If you don't have a good mindset and a good approach to continuous improvement and self-challenging and reviewing what you're doing and thinking about the outcomes, not just the outputs, then you're going to get in a very sticky mess very quickly.
yeah, it's interesting. And then thinking of the book, then the next part we had a big chunk about infrastructure as code and CDK, which I think is awesome. Like there's a massive topic there I get into around kind of automation. And even like what's now called DevOps, which really annoys me because people say I'm a DevOps engineer, I do infrastructure as code. It completely misses the point
Yeah.
of what DevOps is. I'm not open that can of worms.
It's a
But
big topic in itself.
keep that lid
yeah,
on.
It annoys me so much. And all right, I'll start now. Like, so, I think it was in 2007. There was an Agile conference in Toronto. I remember being there, and um, Patrick Dubois put a paper in that conference, and he had put a paper in about dev and ops need to be together. There's no wall between dev and ops. And his phrase he called DevOps. And they hosted a session on. There was four people there. Now I wasn't one of them. I was probably in the next room listening to something about Kanban. But that was the start of the DevOps movement. And he did not mean infrastructure as code. Definitely not. Um, but it's a fascinating topic. But I want to jump to there's a really nice list on page 178.
Yeah.
We talked about, for me, there's a mindset here, and it was covered really well. Remember, even the CAM stuff in the
Yeah.
DevOps movement. There's lots of really good sort of material about pure DevOps, and it's not tools. It's completely hijacked it, which is so disappointing. And the same thing will happen with AI as well, definitely. But I'd be interested to flick through this bullet point and they say, are these things still important in the world of AI development or AI native development? That's another interesting link for Patrick Dubois between the origin of DevOps. Now he's doing AI native development. There is a thread here, which I think he is absolutely on the money, but we'll have to wait for the rest of the world to catch up. Do you want to do that for crack?
Yeah, let's do it. So the first one is a deployment pipeline enables automation. Absolutely. That's more
Yeah,
important than ever for AI.
Table stakes, right?
Well,
yeah, has to be.
I've seen some of the more out there just installing Claude code on a VPS server and then just letting it do whatever it wants to. But I don't think that's really suitable for most enterprises.
So can AI native development with continuous deployment? Wow,
Yeah,
that'd be good fun.
that'll be
Uh,
interesting. But yeah, I do think a deployment pipeline is more important than ever. You need that frictionless pathway to production, but you need to have your guardrails built in.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And then the building block that I always liked that out of kind of primitives, really well spec'd out primitives, which you get from your cloud platform.
Yeah.
So absolutely, yeah, you need to teach the AI or the development team what the primitives you're working with are, be it compute or storage or whatever.
Yeah. What you
Yeah,
don't
I think
want
it's
to
even
be.
more important they come like controlled and tuned
Yeah.
and like and that
Yeah,
sort of tightens things up with you want
Yeah,
architectural constraints.
and we're seeing this with some of the early sort of AI building blocks, like a lot of the MCP building blocks. They're
yeah,
not well architected. They're not secure.
no,
They're not performant. They're not reliable. So be careful what building blocks you pick to build your solutions on,
yeah.
and trust. You know,
And I think that's a great role for platform engineering. They help like make sure those building blocks are hardened
yeah,
and
Mhm.
available and consistent.
yeah,
Next one's a single path to production. Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
I think so,
For sure.
100%. Um,
Next one is include other processes or governance work. I mean, it is all mixed in together.
Yeah,
mm,
but you got to make sure that your compliance checks, your governance checks, your artifacts are produced, your attestation, and any sort of regulatory compliance things are incorporated into your pipeline. You
Yeah,
can't do it after the fact because then, especially the speed teams work out, you're just moving the burden to somebody else.
yeah.
mm.
You got to make sure that those things are automated and incorporated into your stage gates to production.
Mm.
Hmm.
And then serverless mindset enables service choice, right? You're not building a lot of undifferentiated stuff, allows you to move fast and pick the right service for the job.
Yeah, yeah. Code's liability. You want to don't be, and that's one thing actually I think is quite dangerous. I can see some AI models creating huge amounts of code that's irrelevant, and I think it's up to the human to go, no, I don't need 3,000 lines for this.
Yeah.
Um, that is something that is still important, but I can see that slipping for maybe less experienced engineers.
Yeah, they might be blown away by look at all this awesome code it's just created. Look, that's great, it's got everything. And it's like, well, you only needed 3 lines in one file.
Yeah, hit that a few times now with the models.
Yeah.
Well architected. Yeah. that's not going anywhere. I think that like well architected as a standard, so any well documented standard that's
Yeah.
action or outcome orientated is worth its weight in gold in this environment.
One of the benefits of this being a mature, established standard with lots of freely available material out there is all the models have been trained on this sort of term.
Yeah,
So you can very easily create a prompt that says, review this solution against well architected. And you probably don't
yeah,
need to give it much more context than that. And it will go off and give you pretty good feedback.
yeah. That's huge. Sensible defaults. Yeah, I think
That's
that's
so
something
good.
that's observability. Yeah, performance, etc.
Yeah.
Um,
And again, it's back to that, especially if you're using this for AI, if you can articulate what your good standards are as context to your coding sort of tool of choice, then it may or should hopefully incorporate observability, security, performance considerations in the solution that it outputs.
hmm,
Yeah, I think required even 10 times more than maybe they have been in recent sort
Yeah.
of times.
Yeah.
hmm. Next one is cloud security policy. Enables automated security remediation. Um, I do think with the DevOps thing, like it's no longer good enough to have a cloud infrastructure team and a bunch of developers. They need to be very close together.
Yeah.
And maybe platform engineering provides that bridge or whatever you want to call it. But like the cloud infrastructure team, they're not just running workloads.
No.
They're deeply embedded with your system that you're developing. So the security policy needs to be, yeah, needs to be really well thought out.
Yeah. And also you can then shift some of that checks and balances left into the actual build process. So especially as things are more infrastructure as code now, you can incorporate things like CFN lens or CFN guard or any of those things that give you
Hmm.
feedback on, hey, you're validating the policy at build time, never mind at deploy time.
Hmm.
Hmm. That's the next point is sort of a future-proof security policy, rule-based separation.
Yes, absolutely. You do not want one rogue AI vibe coded component taking out your entire architecture and your entire company, right? So you want to make
Hmm.
sure you have good separation of concerns, good isolation, good zero trust network boundaries around everything, right?
Hmm.
Make sure that things are immutable. Build once, deploy many, all that good stuff. So all of those well-trodden good practices that we've been sort of advocating for years, they all come to the fore here when you're
Hmm.
putting all this together.
Does that
Maybe I
include?
don't know, is rule-based enough now? Maybe it's going to be like policy or attribute-based, but there's probably something around there. Yeah,
That matured after we
yeah,
wrote this, like, so we're
it
not just
did.
R back, it's more A back now as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
CDR and other things come out.
cool. Single platform, I think that's really important. The concept that everyone's on the same platform, whatever that is, it's that the whole company's on one platform. It's not each team has their own platform.
Yeah.
A single platform enables speed. Like I
Mhm.
know the thing that we've been talking about a lot is if you really want to leverage AI development in your life cycle, you need standards, and a platform is the implementation of standards.
Yep.
Mm. And I think that's
Um,
definitely a challenging one for sure. I think, you know.
yeah,
Um,
because all you need sometimes as a company is you all seen it in many different companies. We're going to hire this really senior developer. He or she is brilliant. They come in, they go, well, this is the way I do things. And you go, right,
Yeah.
back to zero again.
Yeah.
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 It's like you'll I know most organize you'll always enter into that what do they call it, like the platform fallacy. You're kind of going, well, if you're architecting your software in the right way, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to actually do this in a way that sets yourselves up for long term.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, are you building for success or not? Is the question it normally comes down
Yeah.
to.
And
Um,
you much rather have the challenging conversations up front about, no, this is our one platform for going forward for this particular area because we don't want to have 15 that we have to support and maintain and patch and look after going down the road, right?
Yeah.
yeah. There's so many fallacies you could actually pull out of that particular one. You could actually write a separate book on it. I think.
And Gregor Hope has.
Yes.
Um,
There we go.
very good. Consolidation enables resilience. Um, yeah, I do think it's maybe not a popular opinion, but I do think um, limiting choice is healthy. You know what I mean? It's just it's easier to kind of um, um, and manage, you know what I mean, and secure and do all those other things. It's when it's the Wild West, it's impossible.
It's very much an enabling constraint. It's like, do you want to support 10 programming languages or do you want to support two? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know.
The last one's really about any automate changes should be incorporated with automation,
Yeah.
which I think is straightforward. So it's not too bad. One or two things maybe out of it, but it's not. It's in the right direction.
In the right direction, still stands up.
Mm,
Of course, we said that's all code is a liability. That mindset goes across the whole thing.
Yeah.
I do think that's probably the one thing that I think the AI tools will need to kind of figure out. It's not cool to generate loads of code.
Yeah.
We all think it's impressive, but we need to kind of get beyond that. I'm seeing some of the I don't know what you call them, influencers, cool people, kind of suddenly work out, wow, you need less code.
Yeah.
And it's like this mindset's almost coming back in again. See them feeling talking about it as
We're
if it's
starting
like,
to see it in some of the AI generated docs as well. It's like, being succinct, being to the point, being more terse is actually an advantage because it can just produce tons of content that's very verbose, that's very hard to understand.
mm,
And also maybe there is something I don't know, like I think we've kind of moved a wee bit further away, say from like of CDK patterns.
mm,
It's more about I've kind of gotten more benefit from like white patterns into how certain things should be configured. Like
mm,
so, like say an edge optimized API, there should be like a white paper that kind of dictates, what's the WARF, what's the WAF, what's the CDN, what's the settings of the API, how is it provisioned, and then like the developer, with all the tools they have these days, can assemble that in whatever ways kind of fit into their context. They shouldn't pull down like a full CDK configured pattern. It should be generated at that point in time against the
Yeah.
the documented defined constraints. So I feel like that's kind of evolved a bit. Well, certainly my mindset on
yeah.
that has changed a lot lately.
And the nice thing as well, I think since one of the things that I thought made that really interesting when we were doing that stuff is allowing people to update those patterns. I do think platform engineering teams are starting to lock those patterns down, which is horrendous.
Mm,
Um, there's a nice wee analogy in towards the end there is that a key inertia point to watch out for here is the culture of command and control.
Yeah.
The
mm,
engineering department is not a factory. You cannot
mm,
make faster machines,
mm,
and it's like a better analogy is a school. You need a learning environment. I do worry with the AI that we can actually almost like componentize and make it very factory elemented and type the code in faster, we'll get there faster. But
mm.
you can't remove the learning and the ability to improve stuff.
I
Yeah.
think
And I
that's
think
why that's the real hidden thing there with well architected is no matter what problem you're going after, there should be enough kind of, services capabilities there for you to kind of solution your way through that problem.
Yeah.
Leveraging well architected. If you're using pre-canned patterns, I mean, they can be good sometimes for thought and thought work, but if you're just applying canned pattern after pattern after pattern, are you really leveraging the technology? Are you
Yeah.
really thinking
And,
through stuff?
and we've been through this whole life cycle throughout our careers. We've gone from command control to much more empower and enable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How can we enable the right environment? How can we enable the right tools? How can we empower people to think properly about these things? And
Yeah.
mm,
we play this right, the AI will hopefully help them think better about what is the actual problem you're trying to solve here and what is the actual right solution for the job instead of it being
mhm,
here, this is the pattern you must use.
Yeah.
mm. Very good. Well, that's the crack. I mean, there's a nice map at the end of that as well, which we'll not get into in detail. It talks about developer experience, which is interesting. It's always hard to think about the whole developer experience and what you can evolve to make it better. But
Mm.
yeah, it's exciting times, and this is a fast moving area with AI.
Oh
But
yeah.
that's the crack. I think we'll leave it at that. Should definitely give us a click or a listen on theserviceage.com on LinkedIn or on YouTube. Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone.
Cheerio.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye.